Hey everyone, Token Dave over here, the dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by. And welcome to another edition of AA, Adaptation Application. Here, I share my thoughts on how well an original or an already established story has been adapted into a new or an updated medium. And today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on how well Captain America, the First Avenger, was adapted into the 2011 movie. Spoiler warning. I will be giving away spoilers of what occurred in the movie and some things related to the comics. So if you have not seen Captain America, First Avenger, first of all, why? And second of all, stop this video right now and come back to it later if you're concerned about spoilers. You've been warned. Okay, so by now you should have at least seen my review of Captain America First Avenger. But for those that don't basically know, the movie itself is about basically Steve Rogers, a youth during the 1940s who is has a strong will to serve his country in World War II. However, he keeps getting rejected by the military due to various health issues and his frail stature. Up until basically scientist Dr. Abraham Ernsky hears a conversation between him and his longtime childhood friend, and then Ernsky gives him the chance to actually fight in the army by taking part in an experiment called the Super Soldier Experiment, which it works, and he becomes basically not only the first well-known superhero, but the Allied powers' best weapon against the Axis powers. So basically, I'm going to break this down into how well they adapted the origins of the character in the movie. I'm going to talk about some of the characters, and as well I'm going to talk about the changes that they made from the comics, okay? Not going to go too in-depth because I could be here all day about it. But, fairly enough, basically, from the plot that I described, it's fairly similar to the comic book, actually. Inside the comic book, basically, it's the same thing. Steve Rogers is very frail, and he's been rejected by the U.S. Army, and he has actually undergone an experiment which made him into a super soldier, So they nailed that right out of the park, and that's a pretty simple premise to actually follow. What they do to improve this is, all it was basically just an injection shot that they gave Rogers in the comics, and then he got automatically taller. They made it a little more elaborate here, and it's more appropriate because keep in mind, basically, a super soldier serum is something that has not been duplicated beyond Ernsky. So Rogers is one of two people alive in the comics that has the super soldier serum in their blood. I'll go into that probably next year when I talk about Black History. Anyway, so they did a good job of establishing that plot. But something else that this movie did. This movie did a very great job with incorporating a lot of the minor characters in the mythos of Captain America. For example, we have Abraham Ernsky in this, portrayed by Stanley Tucci, one of the best and overlooked character actors out there. And they actually went into a fairly amount of detail and fairly accurate about Ernsky's backstory in the comic books as well as here. The only difference is they made Ernsky more fearful of Red Skull because Red Skull and Ernsky has a history together in the movie, where in the comics it's more of basically Ernsky and Baron Zemo. So that was one change, but it's an appropriate change. Another change is basically, when Ernsky is assassinated, they actually use the same Gestapo spy whom, I keep forgetting if his last name is Kruger and everything, or Kruger. I keep forgetting. It's been a long time since I read that, y'all, so bear with me. But they use the same Gestapo agent, to assassinate Ernsky, which is I was pleasantly shocked by it. Other side characters they used were actually basically the Howling Commandos. They used James Morieta, who is like someone that was actually one of the Japanese American, soldiers in World War II, which basically were known as the, I keep forgetting if it's Nisei, but they used him as one of the high commandos. They also had, Gabe Jones within this, and Joaquin. I keep forgetting how to pronounce his last name, but he's a French dude. They also had Union Jack, which I was surprised. Oh my God, I can't believe I just had a brain fart and forgot Union Jack's real name in the comics. Wow. Anyway, but Union Jack was actually in this. So they actually incorporated a lot of the good side characters. Also the side villains, because they actually had basically Zoloff in this. And Zoloff was one of the Nazi scientists that was helping both Barnes Zemo, Red Skull, and also Hatemonger in this, which goes into the weapon that Red Skull used. Red Skull is the main villain, but I don't talk about him as much in this because I pretty much stated what I needed to state in the review. But, all you gotta say is Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. Enough said. Anywho, basically, in this movie, Red Skull was using the Cosmic Cube in this as his primary weapon, which basically gave Hydra all these cool cars, planes, basically guns. Man, Hydra in this movie was pretty much like Cobra in the 80s. All the awesome equipment, But in addition, they actually used the Cosmic Cube, but they called it the Tesseract in this movie, and in another video that I already recorded, I'll go into that. But, I'll just state it right here. It's weird for me hearing this as a Tesseract because I'm like, Tesseract? That's what they used in A Wrinkle in Time, the novel. I know they felt that most people wouldn't catch on to that, but sometimes I hate when movie studios try to insult the fans' intelligence. Anyway, so basically, Zoloff is using, Red Skull and Zoloff are using the Tesseract, and it's fairly interesting that they made a big deal of the Tesseract because in the comics it was basically, if it was Red Skull, Hatemonger, and Barnes Zemo and Zoloff who were the ones that were using the Cosmic Cube, in World War II, which Hatemonger is actually Adolf Hitler. Is actually Adolf Hitler in the comics. And in this rendition in the comics, there's Zoloff cloned Hitler, and there's so many clones of Hatemonger, and basically they actually incorporated Hitler's, one of Hitler's clones inside the Tesseract, inside the Cosmic Cube. But that's digressing. Two people that I really need to talk about are basically Peggy Carter and Bucky. Now, Peggy Carter in this, they made her a European agent, which she was originally a French agent, and because basically she was, even though she was born in the United States, she actually was in France for a time period, and she was trained to be part of one of the French Legionnaires, and she was a love interest of Captain America, but she actually was only in maybe 2 comics in the 70s, and then I heard that they brought her back more so in the 2000s, which was fairly interesting because, in the 70s, she was briefly there, and there was an explosion that happened, and she had amnesia, and you didn't really talk much about Peggy Carter, but you talked about Sharon Carter, who was originally her older sister, but they retconned that, I heard, in the 2000s, which was a good idea. And Peggy does a lot more in this compared to her comic book counterpart at the time, which is freaking awesome. And Bucky was the original Robin for Marvel, which was known as Timely at the time. He was just a teenage sidekick of Captain America, and I'll be honest, that was both a great improvement in this movie, but also a bit of a disappointment because, the way he died in the comics, he died in an explosion, where here he died basically on a mission where he falls off of a train. And the death of Bucky was a very a very climactic event in the life of Captain America in the immediate terms, where basically you see it more in longer terms as a basically driving force in later movies. But I just felt that they handled the death of Bucky horribly in this. It had to happen, but they could have done it a little bit better and made it have a little more weight, you know. However, though, I will admit, making him, like, you know, a childhood friend of Steve Rogers and someone that was taller and stronger than him prior to the super soldier experiment was a great idea, you know. I really wish they could have included the Invaders in this, but, you know, because, like, I love the Howling Commandos, and the Howling Commandos were part of Sergeant Fury's team, which helped create S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics, as opposed to in the MCU, but that's a pass. So, all in all, I have to say, basically, with everything that I stated so far and other things in the movie, this adaptation is actually on point, actually. You know, they established a lot of things from the comics, and they also improved on a lot of things, you know. So I'm going to say it's on point, you know. No, correction. I won't say it's on point. No, yeah, it's on point. Yeah, I was going to say it's this thing, but not. It did a much better job. Agree? Disagree? Please, drop me a comment below, give me a like, follow me on Facebook at Token Dave, or on Twitter at Token Dave 80, subscribe, and ring that bell so you know when a new video loads. But until then, this has been Token Dave, the dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by. I'll catch all of you later.